I would think if something's mutating, it would mutate to something worse, just like in the movies.
All right. So that's another thing we should talk about, because what viruses are reproducing in a host, they're mutating, right?
Mhm.
I already told you that, whether it's bats or humans or cows, they're always mutating. And then whether the mutations make a difference or not, that's the point. And so we call that selection. So if there's selection for some property, then the mutant that's better at that will get selected. So if, for example, the virus doesn't transmit well from person to person, you could imagine a mutant arising randomly, which transmitted better. And so now that's going to transmit well, and that'll predominate, right? So that's a property that could be selected. On the other hand, there's really no selection for killing a host faster. Viruses need their hosts to reproduce in, right? So it doesn't make any sense to me that a virus would become more lethal, that there would be any selection for a virus to be more lethal, unless that accidentally went along with some other property that was important. So what has been happening since day one? SARS-CoV-2 starts spreading globally. First months, it's changing, but we're not picking up any signatures that seem to stick around. But then in November 2019, then we see first in the UK, the alpha variant, which we call it now. Mm-hmm. And it has some changes in the spike, and viruses with those changes propagate throughout the UK, and then they spread elsewhere. And then subsequently beta variants in South Africa, in South America. And then, of course, the most recent one, the Delta, was first detected in India and then seems to have predominated globally. And these all have changes that are presumably being selected for, the viruses are just randomly mutating in people. And the more people globally that are infected, the more mutations you're going to have, right?
Right.
And then at some point, some mutation in spike gives the virus some advantage. And so that a virus with that mutation will predominate. So that's what's happened as we have this successive wave of alpha and beta and gamma and delta and so forth. Now, the problem is that we're still in a pandemic and there's still lots of unvaccinated, uninfected people to be infected. And so when alpha is spreading through the UK, the health people say, oh, it's more contagious. But that's wrong, because you have unvaccinated people. They're going to be infected with whatever SARS-CoV-2 is around. And the reason that alpha predominated was that it was more fit than its predecessor. It could do something better. And what that is, we don't know. And that goes all the way down to Delta. Delta is really good at moving through a population. But, there are some people who said, oh, you could walk by someone for 15 seconds and get Delta. And that's just wrong. That's just not what Delta is about. Delta is about other properties that give the virus, this concept of fitness, right? Darwin said survival of the fittest, right? So if a bird is on an island and there's some really thick seeds, a bird that's randomly born with a thick beak will be able to eat those seeds, and then that bird's offspring will predominate. The survival of the birds with the big beaks, that's survival of the fittest. And it happens for viruses as well. So that is what has been going on with these variants. They're not, reports of them being more lethal are completely wrong. CDC this week just came out with a report saying no evidence that Delta is more lethal. And, all along they were saying it was because the data are flawed. It's really hard in an outbreak to make those kinds of conclusions. You really have to step back and do careful studies that take a long time, which you don't have in an outbreak. So my view of these variants are they're more fit than the previous one. They do evade antibodies to a certain extent, but we have no idea what that means, because we don't even know how much antibody you need to protect you. So if a variant makes your antibody titer go from 100 to 50, what does it mean? We have no idea. You're probably still protected. And I want to just say in the end that all the vaccines in the US anyway still protect you against lethal disease and death in the high 90% with all these variants. So it doesn't matter in the end. So I am not as concerned. Unfortunately, the variant narrative has gotten so much publicity that everyone thinks it's a done deal. It's a fact that one variant is more transmissible and more virulent. And it's just not true. It's not supported by most of the data. So I always tell people, just get vaccinated, wear a mask, forget about variant. It's SARS-CoV-2. There are things you can still do to protect yourself.